application note 305, creating a header. This is Terry West, and I'm going to give you just some hands-on demonstrations of how to create a header on a page in your GUI in the layout, and give you some show you how the box model that was discussed in application note 304 as well as pages in application note 302 come together, and you start creating graphical areas and elements within your layout of your GUI. So I've got a very simple GUI. All it is a single page with nothing in it, and it has a background image attached. In this case, the lady in red with her with this full screen background image. There's nothing else in the page. So we want to create a header. A lot of GUIs have a little header area. Maybe they show some status, the title of what page you're on, like home page or info or settings or whatever it is. Maybe your company logo is up there. So let's create a header. Now, we haven't done a lot of creation yet in this series of app notes, so let's right-click on the page object. Click on the page object. Its properties are here. Right-click and say Add New Box or Frame. But let's choose a box because we may want to use things like border and margin and padding, and a frame doesn't have those things. It's too lightweight. If we always find we don't need those things, we can downgrade it to a frame later. But let's start with a box. Now, I've created a box, and if you'll notice, this box has inherited the inner dimensions of its parent. And there's some border or some kind of margin or padding or something around here from the parent. So let's go up to the parent, take a look at its properties, and go, oh, there they are. Padding left, top, right, bottom. I don't want that left, top, right, or border padding, so I'm going to get rid of it. And now you'll notice that if I go to this box object, it goes right to the edges of the page. Now, we want the header only to be this small section up the top. So I'm going to go into its properties of this box. I'm going to give it a name so I know what it is, header. And it changes over here and says header. I can actually click F2 like in Windows and change header right there. Now I'm going to go and make it shorter. Just for sake of argument at this point, I'm going to say its outer height is 50 pixels. And you'll see it changes. The little dashed line is showing the outer dimensions of the box. Now, it's a completely transparent box, and if I want to give it just a little bit of a darker shade so it stands out a bit from the background, I can do that, and we'll talk a lot more about colors in an upcoming app note. But I can go into the background color of the box and first pick something opaque. Let's say that deep purple, or maybe my corporate colors are a little more of that tan, and I can go there. Now, that's fully opaque. So it's covering the background completely. I wanted some more of a subtle look than this. So I'm going to go back and take the alpha portion, the transparency or opacity portion of this, which is the first byte, and instead of making it FF or 100%, 255, I'm going to dial that back to a 20% opaque, so just barely showing. And if you look, I'm going to click on the whole page and get rid of that dashed line. You can see there's just this slight accent now that's giving us that top bar area. Now I'd like a line underneath here just to give it a little more definition. If I go to the header area, it's a full featured box, and boxes have borders that I can specify. So I'm going to specify a border bottom of 2 pixels, and nothing happened. And the reason nothing happened is because I didn't give it any color. So let's go and find the border color bottom and give it a color of something a little bit lighter in the same family. And that's a little much, so I'm going to actually decrease the thickness down to 1 pixel. So it's a little more subtle. There it is. And I may still want a little bit of transparency here, so I'm going to make it, but I just want it to have a little bit of oomph, so let's say 60. There it is. Now that's perfect. Just a subtle line with a well-defined header. There we go. Now, if I want to, I can bring this in a little bit and the line will be a little shorter, and I can do that by setting the outer margins of this box to, let's say, 10 on the left and 10 on the right, and now my border is brought in from the edges because the border is inside the margin, and now I've got a little more subtle kind of feel to this header. But I'm going to leave my line all the way across the top there. Now, that's just a straight header. I could put some text in here, so let's click on the header, right-click, Add New Text, And I'm going to click on this text object. It's like a label. And I'm going to give it some text. Main page. And that's not centered or anything. So now notice that the text is up in the upper left-hand corner. I can actually go to the text and say vertically align it center and horizontally align it center. And it's going to center it vertically and horizontally inside its nearest container or nearest box. In this case, it's the header as its nearest box. If I took this text and slid it out under splash, it's now centered within the whole page object because its parent is psplash, the page. If I slide it back under the header, it's now centered within that area. So there's my title. And why don't I call that title? Okay, now I may want my logo over on the left side here. So within the header, I'm going to add a frame. Now a frame is just like a box, but it's a lot lighter weight. So we'll use frames wherever you can, and frames came in SHIP 207, 5.0.207. It doesn't have things like border and margin and padding, and it renders a lot more quickly, but it's great if all you need to do is attach an image. So let's go grab our Sirius logo here and drag it over onto this frame, let go, and now we've rendered our logo here in the upper left-hand corner. It's a bit big. So I can actually go into the resource over here in the logo, and I can scale this. So I'm just going to multiply it by 0.75, and it'll do the math for me. And I'm going to go in here. I think I need a 0.75 here, and it will do the math. Yep. Now it squished it, so I'm going to want to multiply this by 0.75 as well. And that's a little better. So there's my logo on the top right. Now it looks a little weird being crammed right up against the left edge here of the container. So what we can do is we can go back to the header. And do you remember how we said the margin left, if I put 10 in there? Okay, well it came across over by 10, but the problem with that we didn't like was the border was in, and we wanted it all the way out to the edge. Well, the simple solution is don't use margin in this case. Use instead padding left. And if I go back and take a look, you'll see the border is rendered before the padding, so it goes all the way out. Then we get the padding, and then we get the logo. And the logo, this box is vertically and horizontally, or it's left on the horizontal, centered on the vertical, and so now we'll get our logo there. Now, if we wanted to create a little indicator area over here, we could add another box or a frame. In this case, let's add a box. And this box, by default, will inherit the inside dimensions of the parent, the header. And in this case, you can see where it's sitting, inside the border, inside the padding over here on the left, and all the way out to the edge. Let's go back to the header, and it will help us a little bit and keep things easier to remember if we say our padding on the right is also 10 pixels. So now when I click on this new box that we've created, it's indented correctly on both sides. But I really want this to be over somewhere around here. So I'm going to set the width of this box to be, let's say, 100 pixels. Oh yeah, but it's over on this side. I want it on the other side. So let's set its horizontal alignment right, and boom, now it's over there. And let's put a vertical line on the left edge here. And let's use the same color we used for the bottom so it looks consistent. So let's go back up to that header and find that color that we used. That was that border color. And I can right click, well I can copy, Control C, and I can go back to this box and I can set the border color left. Where are we here? There we are, on this box, to that same color, and the border left property, where are you? There you are, to 1. And now let's go back to the page and see what we've got. There we go. That box that we put right here has a left-hand border, and so I've now carved out a nice little indicator area up there. And I could put a, let's say, a battery status indicator there, or whatever it is that you want to show for your machine. You could put a clock there or whatever. In fact, I think if I remember correctly, there are some battery icons in the standard project. So inside this box, I could stick, let's say, I could attach this image, and all of a sudden we've got this battery percentage image up here. Oh, and what happened? The size of the box changed. Let's figure out why. We attach the image. The width seems to be okay. It's the height that's the problem. Why is that? Well, let's go look at the box's properties. If you look at the width, we've specified it 100. That's going to override anything else, and that's why we continue to have 100 pixel wide here. But the height changed. Let's look at the outer height here. It's not specified. It's inheriting 24 pixels. Well, where is it inheriting that from, and why did it change? If you look at the object we attached, this image here, it has a width and height. Well, there's the height, 24. So if I go back to the box, it says it's inheriting 24. It's getting it from the attached object because I didn't specify it explicitly. So if I want to specify it explicitly, how do I say that I want this box to be the height of the inside of my parent? Because you want to keep it to be the full height regardless of that icon. And the answer is something called a layout rule. We'll talk a lot more about layout rules in the future. But this will just say parent.innerHeight, which says go get my parent's inner height, which is the inner height of the header, and use that explicitly here. And look at that, the box became the full height. And because the image is centered, it's now centered in that area. So if we zoom out and look at our overall page, there we go. We now have an indicator in our header, we have a logo on the left, and we have a title in the middle that will stay centered. So that's a brief demonstration of not only how to create a header that looks actually pretty good, with a lot of subtlety and a lot of care in how it's laid out. You can create a reusable object now that you can put on other pages and do all kinds of things with. If I were to create a new page, here I'll add a new page to my display, and this page is empty. I could give it a plain background color. Let's just give it something quick. And then let's go back to this header. I'm going to do a copy, go to this new page and say paste, and now all of a sudden when I look at this new page, I've got a header. And it's hard to tell with this purple background color, but it's still got that subtle colored textured overlay over top with the lines and everything. So you can create a header that can be reused, copied and pasted. There are actually ways of reusing the identical header across multiple pages, and that gives you a basic idea of how to use boxes and frames to compose rectangular areas, embed images, move things around, and lay out certain areas of your screen.